Okay. Episode number 1 of the Hard Hat Pro podcast. How are you doing, Mr. Harrison?
Doing great.
Why don't you tell us who you are?
I am Brent Harrison. I own Excavating Solutions.
Who are you to me?
I am your dad.
Dude, no way.
I'm Michael's dad.
Pop.
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 He doesn't. So, I understand you own a construction business.
I do.
Tell us a little bit about it.
We've been in business for about 6 years, and I've got an extensive background in heavy construction, vertical and horizontal. And me and my wife, Vicki, decided to go out on our own and start. And we drew a plan up, and we followed the plan, and it's worked from day one.
Amazing. What inspired you to get into construction? I understand it happened early in your life. What did that path look like for you?
Was always interested in the equipment, seeing how it functioned and moved, and seeing sites transform from one phase to another quick. So I always had an interest in it, but I was really young, I guess, when I got started. I wasn't old enough to buy beer.
Yeah.
But anyways, just it started with small equipment and eventually evolved into bigger stuff. So
What's some of the bigger stuff you've worked on?
some of the bigger stuff as far
Is equipment projects?
Lord of equipment wise, 450 excavator, 15 cubic yard articulated trucks, D8 dozers with rippers, well, a lot of bigger stuff, not getting into like mining or anything like that. But as far as like heavy construction, mass earth movement equipment, I've been around all of it. 12M graders, just a little bit of everything, really.
What were some of the bigger challenges you faced early on in your business? And then after that, maybe we talk.
In my business, as far as my career or as far as the business that I own now?
The one you own now.
The number one challenge is, and I think everyone faces this today, is the people coming up. And what I mean is labor. Finding people, not necessarily from an intellectual point of view, but just someone that has the ability and the knack of even willing to learn the trade. Because there's really an art to everything that we do. But trying to find people that have the mindset to do this type of work is just really hard to find. Anyone, we can hire people and have bodies. We're looking for people that have the ability to absorb information and grow off of that and become efficient operators, if you will, because that betters them, and in turn it betters us, and it's just not readily available. So that's a major obstacle that we face today. That would roll right into what things cost today to what they used to cost. Back in 95, 96, I can remember a 420 backhoe paying $71,000 for it back then. And today it's $140,000. So, and all that cost of help and what people expect to be paid today, and the cost of equipment, materials, at some point that turns into what it costs the customer. And it's tough.
This is a good question, Michael. How do you approach leadership in team management in a field that often involves high stakes and tight deadlines?
Approach team leadership. Give me a little more detail about your question.
So some people will say that they have a certain leadership strategy, a way that they like to communicate with their staff, whether it's up the chain or down the chain.
Yeah.
Is there any particular approach you find yourself often using?
Yeah, for me, I always pick out a person or two that I feel knows how I'm going to think, and they're thinking a little bit in advance, because I like to always look ahead. I like to be just several steps ahead. And when I find the person that I don't necessarily want to say wants to be like me, but that wants to lead like me, that will help reflect on how other people view them. So for instance, if I was to pick Aaron to go out and do a job and they heard me direct him as to do something and they seen that he followed that direction, and the guys have faith in that because they got a sense that what he is saying or what he is telling them is almost identical to what I would be saying. So there becomes a level of trust from the bottom up and the top down. I always tell guys that I'm only as good as you are. I can tell you what I want, and I can tell you what our goals are, and then I can pass that along, and I can leave with the expectation that it's going to get done. But at that point, it's all on you. And then when I come back to revisit or review either a daily or weekly activity, expecting it to be done, it's up to the people that you leave back. So you have to be real clear about the message and the direction. And then you have to have someone else. And that goes back to the people that you hire and the people that it just seems more and more difficult. It's a shame. But the skilled trades are just slowly fading away. The guys coming up like you guys, it's all about pushing buttons and electronics, and the old-fashioned way of doing it still needs to be there because that's the roots of how the efficiency and the success of a job actually is.
Yep. And that's really how America was built, is with people in the trades. And then as it fades out, people rely more on technology and everything also to perform these jobs. I know some people that are actually operating dozers and different things out of state via remote because they don't even have the employees and actually to actually complete the jobs.
Yeah.
So that's a huge deal.
And electronics, and I don't want to mislead anybody. The electronics are a necessity, but at the end of the day, they are tools.
Mm-hmm.
It all comes back to our brains, our hands, and even with that, like on a GPS equipment that's used more and more today, there's something called machine controlled data. And then there's a model that's built that controls that site. We really don't need to get into, that's a lengthy conversation in itself, but once the site is calibrated and designed to match the model, then someone has to physically go out and put the information on a card that goes into an instrument, and then the machine starts to recognize those files, and it'll only follow what the operator in the machine, how he starts it. And I guess what I'm saying is there's going to be offsets and vertical offsets, sideline offsets, different things of that nature that has to physically, you have to take your hands and you have to go to a screen and you have to know how to put that information in there. But at the end of the day, what you're looking at on the screen from a topography and contour lines that you may be looking at on a screen is exactly what these eyes or their eyes should be seeing on the ground. If you're talking about a site in general, first thing I look at on a set of plans is a balance site, is a cut and fill site, where's my heavy cuts, where's my heavy fills, and a lot of that, not necessarily off of a digitized piece of paper, it's basically contour lines, topography. And once you learn how to see that, then you can forecast well into the future because your hot spots, you've got 10-foot cuts here and you've got 8-foot fills here, it leaves you a surplus of 2. How am I moving that? And setting yourself up in a way that you minimize, and you all may talk about this later, but you minimize the distance that you're moving that to become more efficient. But more importantly, what I'm getting at with that is that the person that's entering that data and that's operating the electronics, there's still a physical aspect of it that has to happen in order for that to be productive. So I'm not against any technology, but the old-fashioned way and the hands and the eyes and the brain still have to be there. And that's just the simple fact of it.
So you mentioned foresight, seeing where your cuts are going to come from and knowing where those cuts are going to fill later on. How do you take a novice hand and teach them how to see that? And what sort of time frame do you expect before somebody becomes pretty proficient at knowing what's going to happen before it happens?
It goes back to the individual. It's individual specific. I think everyone has an ability to learn certain things in our industry. Some catch on much faster. Some may be better in this corner. Some are just great overall. But I guess to answer the question is, you have to see it basically from start to finish, and you have to explain along the way so that when you take a project that, not to get into numbers, but if you take a project from start to finish that has a margin anticipated in the beginning, if you hit the margin, you can explain as you're going why I'm going to hit that margin, and then you can explain why we're not hitting that margin. Problem is the recovery of what's lost. So once you lose a portion of that margin, then you start to play makeup and catch up to get back to what your original number was. And really the reality is, if you spend more time thinking up front and you minimize your movements, and most of this is based on cubic yards, we're talking about earths. A lot of it is based on cubic yards. So if you can figure out how to understand the project in the beginning and where you're heavy and where you're light, referring to cut and fills, to minimize the distance of moving that and what's the most efficient way to do it. And if you're taking that person and you're explaining that as you go, trial and error, beginning to end, a margin that was met, a margin that was lost, they're going to see that and they're going to learn basically from those mistakes. And mistakes aren't bad. It just depends on how elevated that is. And you can take a very simple-minded person that has the ability to, the willingness to learn. I can take you out in the field and explain something to you, and I'm more than confident that you're going to understand what I'm saying. And applying that for the reasons that I'm telling you is either going to make sense or it's not. The problem becomes when questions don't get asked. So when guys tend to maybe lock up and they don't ask the right question at the right time, your margin might go down. And if you want to go with numbers, let's say you're on 30% and you get 20% through the job and your bottom number is going to end up being 25%. Where do you make that 5% loss up? Could you have made it up by you asking a question? Maybe. Did you speak up? I don't know. But if you didn't, why? So the communication there between the two has to happen. It's critical. The communication, I have to be able to direct. You have to be able to understand. And when you get lost, you need to come back and ask the question before too much gets away from you.
Yeah, and I think that does stem from leadership in general as well, as having a comfortable environment at the start to encourage questions and really not feel like they're going to be criticized as you're going to be.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's, and when I said something a minute ago about I'm only as good as these guys are, there's a time and place for all of that. Criticism in one way can be fun and goofy and acting up, but criticism just to bring someone down. If you bring one guy down by some ignorant message that you sent, that's affecting the guys below him or around him, and that's bad for the whole team. I mean, everything, you need to try to keep it as positive, but you need to reinforce why this is important. And once the understanding is there for the assembly of that product, and you understand what I said, and I know in your mind you're clear about what I said, and you understand it, then, we're over the hurdle.
Yep.
So that's that.
To piggyback off of that, if you have relayed how a job should be done and you felt confident someone understood, but you come back after the fact and things aren't as expected, how would you bring that up? The leader of that crew or team, and would you go a step past that and bring it to the crew directly, or would?
For the first go around, the first time or two, naturally, I'm going to tell you, I'm probably not going to be real happy, but I'm going to be understanding, because first thing I'm going to do is ask, why is this not the way it was prescribed? And then I'm going to explain, because you deviated from the direction, there was meaning and reason behind that, and maybe I didn't give you all of it. And in some cases, I wouldn't particularly have time to give all of that. I shouldn't have to. And what I mean by that is, in most cases, if I tell you to do something, there's a reason. And I say, Michael, do it this way. It may seem a little unorthodox, or you may think otherwise, but do it just like I'm telling you. And I may need to move on. And you may have guys sitting there waiting, so we're trying to move the job along. I don't have time to describe all the details to you. But there was a message and there was a reason behind that. You deviate a little bit from that and you do it a different way. You don't achieve the same goal. You may have done something that cost us time and money because you decided you knew a better way. The best way for that to be handled would be, hey, pick the phone up, ask, or just question, hey, is it possible I can do? And I may at that time say, no, because we have, to come back and compact that and have it tested. Don't put another lift on it. Maybe you put another lift on it, and I'm like, why did you do that? Now we got to take a foot of material off. We have to have this tested. The first time or two, I would probably be a little more open-minded and then explain and see how it works from there. And if it continues, then it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
We all know what the outcome ends up being.
Yep. And I do think that as an employee, you just have to have that trust in the leadership enough to know they just know.
No doubt.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is verbal. It's the way you carry yourself, the way you speak. A lot of it is motions, seeing how you do things. I have watched guys, I've learned as much with my eyes as I have with my ears. When people see that you can physically do it and they see you do it in a very methodical, extremely efficient way, that's going to create one level of respect. Then the other one is, how do you teach? How do you speak? That's another level. And if two of those work and they're married together and you're giving that message to a young person coming up, the respect just naturally happens.
Yep.
But you must respect the people that you're taking the message from. If your guys or people don't believe in you, you're set up for failure to begin with.
Yep. And I completely agree with that. And I really just see that's the biggest difference of being an employee in the construction space and being switched to being the owner. You have to learn these leadership skills and everything. It's not just come to you. It comes over time. And I'm sure that you've really seen that big switch when you were just an employee versus a business owner, and how that really just shifted and how much you had to really change in terms of your mindset and your procedure and just the way you...
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of pressure that goes with that too, because advancing to those levels you refer to as being an employee, which I was at one time, and I was equal to all my counterparts. And then my efforts and knowledge of, we'll talk about when I was going horizontal, that became a part of where engineers and architects was coming to me for advice about site work, because what's on the paper is not necessarily the same as what's in the field. And sometimes we would have red line drawings, or we would have to do a variance. The standard wouldn't work. We had to upgrade. Just site specific things would change. But then when the owner started seeing that, okay, he knows how to make water run. And we all know, like, world first stormwater, it runs downhill. But how does it go downhill? Do you do it in a wider path? Do you do it in a concentrated flow? What are your inlets? What are your outlets? How are you protecting them? And there's a whole other series of things that go along with that, as far as like erosion control, and are you affecting something downstream, and how do you protect that? And those are things I started learning along the way that the owner's seen. And of course, they empower me, and then, they want me to monitor and observe, put people under me to help them come up. And next thing, I've got 30 people that I'm responsible for, and that all comes with a level of responsibility. But you learn so much along the way, and you get into some of the bigger trades, a lot of the municipalities and big energy companies. Like, I had a really good relationship with some of the higher up big people at LG&E projects that we did, because one of our things was we done a lot of infill, brownfield development in Louisville, and they had zero front, rear, and sideline setbacks, and that gave the developers the opportunity to build from property corner to property corner, which was good and bad. It used to be when you had sidelines, it gave you a little bit of a buffer, But now that they wanted to go all the way to the property lines, and some of these, I mean, one job in particular, I excavated 6 feet below street level. One of the issues was that Louisville has a lot of overhead electric, and this was a 5-story building, first floor commercial space parking garage with condominiums above it. But what I'm remembering is that the aesthetics from a marketing standpoint, from the people selling the units, when you looked out your balcony, you were at eye level with power lines. And he wanted to omit all of that to make the view, but it's panoramic view, much better, because these lines just run forever. And we created a plan wanted to get rid of it and go to underground, which was not really economical for this particular project. But what we did, we took the T-post, and where the lines are spread out over a certain width, we used what was called a spacer cable, and it's a little diamond configuration. So we took all of these wires that were spread out and we shrunk them up to this. So now you were looking at mainly one line instead of 4 separate lines. But I don't know why we got off on that. It was just part of learning, and not just structural, the way the project was to be viewed at in the end. A lot of that started getting put on me, and then the responsibility and the employees. And
that was probably like the big shifting point in terms of, after a certain amount of time of managing that crew, there where you had the confidence enough to start your own business instead, I would say.
Yeah, I was never scared to do it even back then. I would have done it even then. I had got a lot of respect from people in the trade. It took me a while. I had to learn a lot. There's a lot to learn. But really, where I ended up going out horizontal, when I say horizontal, I'm talking about site work and heavy construction, not vertical. It got to be, for me, it got to be where I was working along highways, and a lot of my work, I had vehicles running from me to you 70 miles an hour. And I guess I want to say I got smart, but I got real stupid because I started getting into learning this GPS stuff, and I got into surveying. I learned how to control a site and calibrate sites, lay out sites, and I've done everything from beginning to end as far as laying out really large road projects, construction projects, from the boundaries to the KYTC monuments to curbs to bridges. So the smarter I got with learning that, then they wanted to take advantage of the guy that knew a little bit about a little bit about a little bit.
Yeah.
So I just thought, I learned all this. My wife was always supportive, and we just sat down and talked one day and was like, hey, let's do something for ourselves. And we knew we could from a knowledge standpoint, but there still had to be a plan. We drew it out. We drew it out to the button, and we followed the plan step by step. And the first year, it went exactly how we wrote the plan. And I don't want to call that luck. I want to call it ability and knowledge and success because of
basically targeted risk.
Absolutely. But the risk was minimal. In the beginning, it was a little nervous, thinking it could be, but yeah, it worked out well.
It was great. If you were someone that's just starting out, what would you say would be the first step in trying to do their own thing?
Well, depending on where you're going in, if it was anything like what we do, the first thing would be know what you're doing, understand the industry, know how to be efficient with your work. I think is probably one of the most key parts of being successful. You hear people talk about time is money, and overall, yes, it is, but every job is not going to be textbook. They are going to be site specific, but if you know how to start a job and you know how to end the job, I've always said from an operator's view that I've said that you've got hoggers and you've got finishers. You've got guys that can go out there and hog a bunch of material and make the transformation. You could pay them 3 times their salary, but they could never finish. And then you got guys that can finish, that could never move the material effective manner and efficient manner like the haulers can. But very seldom do you ever find the hauler and the finisher as one. They're usually two different people.
So it's a leader's job to notice those traits in people and bring it out.
If it's there to bring out, yes, it is. Some people just have the mindset that they think that, okay, I took this shape of this particular portion of the earth and I made it flat, but it looks totally different. They see major transformation and they think that they've succeeded, but that's not the case. So there's more to be done. And you just don't normally find, and there are people that can do it, but usually you have guys that can go in, hit it hard in the beginning, and then you got somebody else to come in and put the finishing touches on it. Usually it's not the same people.
Well, why don't you take over here? I think.
Okay. Can you really describe a time when you had to make a difficult decision and really how you handled the situation?
Sounds like an interview for a job.
Oh, yeah.
And I would even just say, what is one of your biggest jobs that became a disaster and how you handled it, really?
Okay. Well, I had a project on 830 East Main Street. It was a geothermal project. We couldn't find rock. It was all sandy loam. So we created a plan to use, it was a 100,000 square foot footprint of this building of impervious surface being the roof, that we were going to collect water and we needed to do something with it. We needed to use it to our advantage because had we discharged it into the storm sewer system, at the time we would have had to pay what they call a regional facility, which was like $50,000 if I'm remembering right. We created a plan, me and two architects created a plan that I wanted to. Heat transfer for geothermal is always better in rock. We were trying to mimic rock, and the only way we could mimic rock that I could come up with was using what's called agricultural lime. So I excavated 6 feet below street level to create a cell to do a 14,500 linear foot of geothermal. So instead of going vertical, which is 300 feet per ton of unit for heating in there, we didn't have that ability. So we went horizontal. And what that done was I excavated 6 feet below street level to do a run of geothermal, foot of agricultural lime, run of geothermal, foot of agricultural lime. You get the picture. It was all on a grid. And in order, at different times of the year, to saturate that field to get the maximum out of the geothermal, we wanted to saturate it. I collected that water from that roof, ran it through a manifold that was set up on a butterfly actuator valve with a moisture sensor that told the ground, like, hey, I'm dry, I need water. It would open the valve. When it rained, the water would flood a 100,000 square foot footprint, 6 feet deep, to saturate that agricultural lime to get the most effective use out of our geothermal system. And then when it was flooded, the valve would open, and then the surplus or extra material that I couldn't use was sent to the storm. Real quick on that, instead of us paying the $50,000 regional facility fee, we paid a big $0. They could not believe the plan and the design that we had come up with to utilize that water to effectively help us improve the heat transfer for our geothermal for a 1,500 square foot building. Estimated heating, air, and hot water costs were estimated. 1,500 square foot building, the heating, air, and hot water cost was estimated to be somewhere between $7 and $11 a month. This building won the National Green Building of the Year, which was a pretty big deal at the time. But the point of the story was that I had to excavate 6 feet below street level. I said that in the beginning. There was a mattress place, I can't remember the name, but they made mattresses. They're well known, but they had a garage, and it just had some miscellaneous stuff stored in this garage. Told you about them having 0 sideline and rear line setbacks. My boss was taking every inch of the property that they gave him.
Yep.
And I told him, I said, hey, I've got a dig next to this garage. And he said, what are you going to do? I said, I need to shore it. And he said, what's that going to cost? I said, shoring it's going to cost us probably another $75,000, $80,000 to shore it up. Because we would dig and drive pilings, then shore it up. He's like, can you dig it and just cover it with plastic? I said, yeah, I mean, I can dig it. I said, but I don't want to. I don't want this garage falling. And I had one of my guys down there and they're digging. And I told him, I said, whatever you do, this is kind of funny how we're having this conversation. I said, whatever you do, not dig by that garage. Stay away from that garage till I get out of my meeting. I went to my meeting. Halfway through the meeting, I get a phone call. And he says, hey, I was digging by the garage in the garage. So the whole roof of this big 800-foot long garage roof just fell, and there was just a huge smiley face. The block and everything fell. So I went down there. My first thought was, I almost just fell to my knees because my first thought was, we've hurt some. And I asked him, I said, is anybody hurt? Was anybody in the building? Was everybody accounted for? And once he relayed that to me, because I left the meeting, and we're communicating on the way. I'm getting there as fast as I can. I get there and I just sit down on this rock and I just sit there and I'm just looking at this and I'm thinking, this could have killed somebody. He was directed not to dig there because he didn't dig the same way I would dig. Okay. I would have dug along it and made a sheer vertical, clean, stable edge. He dug with it and left a tooth mark and loosened it up so that it would undermine. And that's exactly what happened. But that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, direction. But once you give the direction, then you just have to hope that people are doing what they're told. And when they're not, there's a consequence. In this particular case, a structure fell. Now I'm looking at it and I've assessed it and I've gotten past the part where no one's hurt. Thank God. That was the most important thing. Now I got to figure out how am I going to save this building. Now I've talked to the owners and we brought engineers down, and I got a hold of some friends of mine at a structural company that we support beams for parking garages and whatnot. And I thought, I'll just get a series of 50-ton jacks and we'll run a structural beam up here and we'll jack this building up 2 inches higher than what it originally sat. It was one side of a building, by the way, not the whole building. It was one side, and it was a smiley face. So I jacked this building up 2 inches higher than what it originally was, come in, poured a new footer, laid block up. Now I got a 2-inch gap. I released my jacks, set the building right down on a brand new wall, and saved the building. The building, you would never even know that it happened. Pure luck. But that's something that happened in my career that explains.
Oh, 100%.
So if we were looking at a $70,000 to $80,000 before anything collapsed to shore it up properly, with it all said and done.
All said and done, wall footing and everything, I may have only been out 25. So in the end, I mean, it's still cheaper to let the building fall, but if it was done my way, the odds are that it would have never happened. I overcame the problem, solved it. It still cost us less, but it's not something you don't ever want to get the phone call. It's something as simple as following direction.
Why do you think that particular operator deviated?
Yeah, if you want to know the truth, I think he thought he was doing something that was going to please me, that I was going to come back and see something done that he knew that I was getting ready to do, and he thought, I'll do it for him and he'll be happy. Or I kept him on. Good guy, done many projects past that. The outcome was far better than it could have.
Yeah, that sounds like one of those times where if you weren't rushed, it's easy to explain the why, but we can't always explain the why and get guys to see it like we see it.
Yeah.
That's just that's just part of leadership.
Yeah, but I guess if there was one thing that I would instill in the people that I'm trying to teach is that just trust me, there's a reason. If you need to know more, we can talk later, but I've got to go. We need to move on, or whatever the situation is. But if I tell you there's a reason and we can talk about it 5 minutes later or 5 days later, don't forget it, bring it up. I'm more than receptive to the question. Eventually people are going to get it, like they're going to understand there's a reason, and it's just never an issue. It works itself out.
Yep. How do you like stay like motivated and continue to grow personally as well as professionally after being in the construction industry for this long?
I probably would answer that real quick by saying I actually like what I do. So I can see it in people's eyes. I can hear people talking lightly in the background. I can hear people like, oh, when you take something and you make it completely something else in this amount of time, and you hear and you see what people think. Well, there's a lot of stuff that we do, people, they just don't see it. I can tell you, like, Michael, I'm going to build you a new wall behind this wall out here, and we're going to cut that old wall down, and we're going to do this and that. And you just don't understand because you just haven't seen it. A prime example is the retaining wall that we recently built. We built this really big retaining wall, and the scope of work itself wasn't really overwhelming by any means, but it was something that no one in that entire neighborhood probably thought they could ever do, especially the people we were working for. It's not that complicated. It costs money, but it can be done. And I've always told my kids, if you ever want to be proven wrong, tell me it can't be done, because it can be done. But the thing is, to answer you, to summarize real quick, I like what I do. And I guess if I ever stop liking what I do, I'll have to revisit that.
Yep.
But because I can go out there and transform something that other people either don't have the vision for, and then I do it, it's gratifying. So I enjoy it.
Makes it all worth it for sure.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good question and a good response.
Okay, so what has been your main source of like new customer acquisition, getting new jobs, and what, as you quote jobs, or is it mainly coming through for referrals and different things like that?
Well, we'll trip you up for a minute.
Yep.
I'm not really looking for this young man and you and Aaron and Natalie, the message that you can take what I'm doing and multiply that times this to become this, and it's there. Now, what do you want to do? I will continue to do what I'm doing, and I'm not really looking to work myself. I think the idea behind work, they're taking the company, they're going to get into some of the bigger stuff that I used to do. And I'm going to direct them and help them get there, which it starts off with volume, and then the scale grows off of that. So they'll increase their volume at what they're doing now, and then they will upscale their projects based off of that. Right now, Jake's interested in doing footings, which are pretty precise. At some level, you have a little margin. He's going to learn how to dig footings, place the rebar, tie the rebar, pour the footing, meet an elevation that's set by others, and square.
Hopefully.
That's pretty
important.
You get a block layer, man. That's it. But anyways, so he'll start that, and I'm going to teach him that part of it. And with the two combined, on the earth moving end of it, and then the structural footing end of it, it's endless for what he can do. And that's a loose term, but the reality is it couldn't be more true.
Yeah.
Do you think that coming from a background of doing a lot of bigger work, residential development work that you're doing now, is a lot easier because of your background?
Well, so my first 13 years was residential. So that's my vertical that I refer to. And then up to just 6 years ago, I was horizontal, and that's where my site work and highway work came in. So learning bits and pieces of both of them, sure. Now, the foundation and the roots of where I became efficient with doing what I do, for sure, was in my first 13 years. No doubt about it. And because I was good at what I was doing, I cared about what I was doing, my finished product proved itself. I didn't leave loose ends. I've had people that started to believe in me. I created respect. I created the responsibility. It all came from those first 13 years. When I talked a minute ago about upscaling, then to get into that upper scale level, that came from my horizontal stuff. Your machinery, massive cubic yard jobs. I've done 750,000 cubic yard jobs. I've done major embankment work, clear piles, and indents, abutments, major storm work, soil stabilization work, remediations, abatements. A lot of that stuff I learned the second half of my career. So anyways, I put the two together, and somehow right now we're trying to extract that and then import it into other mines that are actually receptive and doing well. You've seen it. You've been in the field.
It's got good direction within the next.
Yeah.
So I would say, like, how do you really balance your work life and family life to really just see like how everything plays into each other and how separated they are and how intertwined
Not
they are?
real separated. So when we started this, my wife wanted to be a part of it too. Ironically enough, she's with me every day, but she has went from one extreme from what she used to do, going as far as to becoming our dump truck driver. You know, she's taken a big old dump truck and handled it very well and been very helpful to all the guys in the field in moving material on site. And you hear the phone calls and the conversations, and they'll call her and ask her at times about certain things. And in the end, we're trying to minimize some of that and get it on the guys. But personal life at home, really it just becomes second nature because all Jake's ever known is this is what I do. It's all he's ever seen. That's all Aaron has really ever seen. It's really a natural
Blend.
Yeah, it's not like I've done something odd it was all, that's just what they expected. So between her and the kids, even the grandkids, so they know this is what we, but the thing is that they know we do it. They know we do it well. They know we can pull in, and the level of respect that we get from our clients and the way that we speak to them, they speak to us. I was telling Jake earlier today about a job we pull in, and one of the guys was, hey, I want you to do this and this. We went and looked at it, and when we left, I asked Jake, I said, what's the one thing you got out of that? He came up with a couple of creative little things about the way that it seemed like they were being respectful. But what I got out of it was, not one time did they ever ask me, how much was this cost? You know, I directed some work to be done, and they never asked how much was it going to cost, because they know that it's going to get done right. It's going to get done very efficient. It's going to be effective. You're going to have a finished product, and at the end, you're not going to have a comeback. And there's a level of trust there because we build so much. They anticipate maybe what a cost might be, but they never question. And that's just the way we are. We do it right, and we do it for a fair wage. And you expect something, I'm going to give it to you. And in the end, we expect to be paid, and we don't have any issues. And but we actually have another builder that we've worked for him for a few years, and some of his jobs can range anywhere from $500 to $10,000. It doesn't matter. But he'll say, hey, I need you to go do this. He won't even hardly describe the work. He'll say, hey, can you go look at this and just do whatever needs to be done? And we're like, yep, we go out there, and it can be little, it can be big, it don't matter. But we bill for it. He pays us. He's never asked us to give him a price up front. And that to me is about as respectful as a owner of a company as there can be. People just have that level of trust, and that means a lot.
Yes, it does.
Very wrong ways. Don't do people wrong, and don't try to make up for your mistakes and make someone else pay for it. Own what you need to own, and did your job in a manner that you make money and do people right, and that's the same level of respect you'll get in the end.
And I think that also comes back to when people are starting out in this field, they don't really know how to price themselves and everything. And a lot of people are just underpricing themselves and they feel like it's not worth it. You have to have some sort of boundary of, okay, this is my minimum price and I'll find someone else. You don't just take anything that comes to you,
I
essentially.
know a couple of people that price things really low. I won't mention names.
Yep.
I'm looking at them.
We're getting better.
You guys are so good at what you do. And I don't know how to really explain how to charge what you all offer to people. But I know that in my world, I've been around long enough that even with inflation, I've adapted to those costs. Now, when you do like production building, they always want that number to be lower because that makes their margin. And we talked about margin earlier. They want that number to be bigger. We look at competitors and listen to what they charge and this, that. But at the end of the day, my goal is to hit a certain target after expenses and your people are paid for. I can look at a job and I can real quick estimate what I'm going to have in it. Workers' comp, insurance, fuel, maintenance, equipment, materials. I'm going to have this in it, and it's going to take me this amount of time. And then I can figure out what that margin needs to be. And I can do that pretty quick. Some of them is in my head. Some of them is sitting down and actually creating that formula, the bigger jobs. And it all ends up going back to what we talked about in the very beginning. It is the people that work for you and how efficient are they? How much of how I would do it did they put into their game to get it done in efficiency? Because that number can get blown really fast.
Mm-hmm.
One or two little line items in your project to blow that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it really just comes down to trust as well. If you have a good reputation, then the client already knows that they're getting a fair rate and they don't need to even go get other quotes and stuff because they know you'll do it right. You have the good rep and you just know that you're going to have a good experience in the end.
That's true. But I mean, if you're working for like a municipality or state, the way they work is they send it out to bid and then you have a sealed bid date and you'll all sit around and open up bids.
Mm-hmm.
They take the lowest bid.
Yep.
It does not matter. Low bid wins. That person has to be bonded to account for whatever size job that may be. But you learn real fast, and that's stuff that I was part of. That's why I know some of this. But you learn real fast how much money people left on the table, and you can figure out the cost.
Mm-hmm.
But there's only so many line items in a job. It can be 20, it can be 10, it can be 30 or 40. But at the end of the day, if you bid a job and I bid a job and they're sealed bids and they open them and you left $500,000 on the table, I got to go back and figure out, where did he leave that $500,000? I'm going to figure out what he did to make sure that I didn't make some kind of a mistake. It can be made, hopefully not, but they can be made.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much all the questions I have.
Yeah, I think this was a really good first episode.
For sure.
Good.
Definitely some nuggets we're going to be pulling out of here.
Oh,
Yeah.
Some golden nuggets.
Golden nuggets.
fine. You guys deserve it. And I hope everything goes well for you and you all become as successful as we have. And the future is a long ways off, so just keep going after it.
Heck yeah. Probably need to sit here and get some stuff for Expanding Solutions real quick and putting together a homepage video.
Oh, yeah, cool.
I don't know what any of that means, but I will take your direction.
Awesome.
Thank you, sir. I've heard it's easy to hire someone and tell them what to do, but it's hard to hire someone and have them tell you what to do. So I appreciate that you're receptive to stuff like that.
Yes, and you're welcome. I had a guy tell me once, and I don't want to use the language on your thing here, but he said you can go in being a butthead and become nice. You can never go in being nice and become a butthead. And ever since he said that, in other words, I've looked at that often, and I thought it's perfect sense. Because you set the tone that you can be this person, or I can be this. But you can't go in being Mr. Nice Guy and then be Mr. Bad Guy, because people don't understand that. If they know how you are up front, they know what you expect up front. I'm not talking about just going off the rail, being a complete look.
Yeah.
I'm talking about being a very fun, aggressive, clear-minded, clear direction person that someone can trust what you're telling them. Now, if they receive that in a way that they can't take it, or their emotions or the way that they live don't allow them to receive that and use that in their daily tasks, then they're not your guy. I can sit here and talk nice to you all day, but at the end of the day, you're in a world and you're in construction of all things.
The cat.
You're in construction of all things where it's a brutal environment for the kind of guys that you're just around some rough guys. You're around great guys. You're around guys that this country needs, that people need to do the things that we do. And they're good at what they do. But it's no place for someone with a continuous soft heart. It's tough, but clear message for sure is the key. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Fantastic.